First, Apple created iPad, then iPad mini. Then Apple destroyed iPad and created iPad Air, only to destroy iPad Air and create iPad Pro. Twice, thrice, Fice, whatever. Now Apple has recreated iPad and, finally, iPad mini and iPad Air as well. So what we have now for the first time is a fairly complete lineup of iPads, from entry-level to mid-range to top-end, and that's thanks in large part to the new iPad mini 5 and iPad Air 3. I got to spend some time with both in New York City, and while I only managed to abscond with the new Mini, the new Air is almost identical. Since I spent the better part of a year with the old 10.5-inch iPad Pro as my primary iPad, and I realize a lot of you want all the information possible to make the best buying decision possible as soon as possible, I'm going to offer up some preliminary thoughts on that as well. In other words, you're going to get twice the video bang for your view. I'm Rene Ritchie, and this is Vector. Before we get started, I'm just going to hit this mini here with the unbox hammer and see what we find. And it's pretty much what we always find: iPad, pamphlets, stickers, charging brick, and lightning cable. And yeah, more on that L word in a scalding hot minute. The iPad mini 5 is exactly the same size as the mini 4. That's 7.9 inches on the diagonal for the display. The iPad Air 3 is bigger than the Air 2 though. It doesn't quite go to 11 like the 2018 Pro, but it gets pretty close, 10.5 inches, just like the 2017 Pro. Now that might make it sound ever so slightly less portable than the previous generation Air. But as Apple said a couple of years ago when they debuted the 10.5-inch size, it's just perfect for the on-screen and external keyboard. So, in my opinion, the trade-off is well worth it. Sticking with a 7.9-inch model in the age of iPhone XS Max might also seem strange to some people. Big phones overlapping with small tablets and all. I've been guilty of saying that myself. But the aspect ratio actually does make a difference. Phones are big now, but skinny and tall. That means documents are constrained not by the height, but by the width. And that makes them small. iPad mini at 4x3 instead of 19.5x9 doesn't have that problem. It's not just that it's almost twice as large as the Max, pages fit on it almost perfectly as well, resulting in not just a bigger, but a much better experience. Sure, if you don't want to have to buy or carry both a phone or tablet, the Max is still a great mix. But if you do want a small tablet, it definitely still has some advantages over even a bigger phone. Stating the wicked obvious, the design language of these new iPads is decidedly old. Or, I guess, classic if you prefer. Both retain Touch ID, the second faster generation sensor, and have the bezels to go along with it. Which, isn't my personal preference, but some people legitimately prefer them. The bigger gripping area, regardless of things like palm rejection, just makes them feel more comfortable about holding it. And yeah, every time I get that cockamamie camera covered warning on the latest generation iPad Pros, because I mostly use them in landscape, and Face ID just ain't on top like that, chief, I sympathize with them so much. Regardless, Apple is saving the new design language for the high end, at least for now. Same with the speakers. The Pros have 4 that adjust the sound dynamically with the iPad orientation, so as you turn, it turns. The Mini 5 and Air 3 stick to 2, which rotate the sound with the iPad, adjusting it not at all. That's nowhere nearly as good, especially in landscape, but it's part of what's keeping the sticker price non-Pro as well. And yeah, they have Lightning instead of USB-C. For some people, especially those with tons of Lightning accessories already, that's probably more of a benefit than a drag. For nerds like me though, the ones who just want to plug everything into the same port, not so much. But it's obviously yet another point Apple's using for differentiation. In other words, if you want that more computer-like connector so you can hook up an external display and all of your other Pro Creativity toys, you're still going to have to go with the Pro Creativity iPad. But that also means both still have their 3.5mm headphone jacks, which is something the fancy new Pros and their narrower bezels just don't have room for anymore. I've got AirPods, I'm fine, but for people who just prefer old school headphones, or legitimately need to be able to conveniently listen and charge at the same time for accessibility, these might be even better. Then there's the silver, the space gray, and wait for it, Apple's current coppery gold options, the latter of which Apple won't even give the Pros anymore, not at any size. I guess out of risk of distracting us with all that shiny wonder. As someone who just loves all the colors and finishes and wishes we'd see even more of them, like Product Red, at least it's something. Both the iPad mini 5 and the iPad Air 3 have fully laminated displays, just like the iPad mini 4 and the iPad Air 2 of yesteryear, and that's a considerable step up from the currently non-laminated 9.7-inch iPad Nothing, especially when combined with its anti-glare coating for really low reflectivity. It's not something everyone notices all the time, but if you're in bad indoor or bright outdoor lighting, it can really make a difference, especially for your eyes. They're also DCI P3 wide gamut color, so your reds look really bright, fiery red, and your greens are beyond verdant, making them better than any Mini or Air that's ever come before. Again, not everyone appreciates or even notices wide color, but if you're painting on your iPad or working with photos, it looks so good it's hard to go back to plain old sRGB. There's no 120Hz ProMotion either, so if you're waiting for the buttery fresh refresh rate, you'll just have to keep waiting or go Pro. But there is True Tone, which dynamically adjusts the display to match the color temperature of the world around you, keeping whites white, not blue-white or yellow-white, but crispy paper white. I know some people dislike it for photo editing or other color-sensitive work, but I love it and leave it on all the time. On the inside, we have the Apple A12 Bionic system on a chip. It's not quite the SoC of the Pros, which have the even beefier A12X. There you have 4 efficiency and 4 performance cores, while here you have but 2 of the latter, and 4 GPU cores rather than the 7 of the X, with 3 GB of memory. There's no Face ID, of course, not on either, but the neural engine in the A12 can still help power all the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and computer vision tasks Apple and all the apps throw at it. Everything from photo enhancement to photo sorting to patterns to sets to all the heavy lifting all those crazy new Core ML apps do every day. As silicon goes, it's pretty much identical to the iPhone XS and still a huge bump up from the A10 Fusion found in the 9.7-inch iPad, never mind the A8 or A8X in the old Mini 4 or Air 2. For what are ostensibly mid-range tablets, A12 is just ridiculously OP, overpowered. But the same is true of iPhone XS. That's kind of Apple's thing these days, though, building in enough overhead that your devices won't just fly now, but keep on flying for 4 to 5 years and iOS updates to come. With the length of time most people keep iPads or hand them down now, that's flat out terrific. And for now, well, you can play the hell out of games like Fortnite at 60 frames per second, or, feel free to insert whatever the current hot game paying streamers $1 million a pop to promote these days is, right there. All of this with the iPad standard promise of 10 hours of battery life for both. As always, it'll take me a little while to do real world testing with them, but there's a Pokemon Go Community Day again this weekend, and that'll help. And yes, you can too Pokemon on an iPad, especially the GPS models, which don't drift maddeningly like the Wi-Fi only ones. That Wi-Fi, by the way, is the same as before, up to 866 megabits per second MIMO. The LTE is new and improved though. Not 5G, of course, because, well, literal LOL, there's just almost no 5G almost anywhere yet, but it is up to gigabit LTE. And as you already know, the eSIM deal, stick a regular SIM in at home if you go for the cellular model and then sign up with an eSIM for travel packages whenever and wherever you're on the road. The cellular models are more expensive, of course, but I always go for them. Aside from GPS, I use them all the time while traveling to coffee shops or to other cities as giant, long-lasting tethers from my Mac. It's much better and much more secure than using whatever coffee shop, hotel, or airport Wi-Fi is just lying around waiting to sip my data. So to me, it's always worth it. Where the new iPad Mini 5 and iPad 3 story starts to break down for me, at least a little bit, is with the cameras. I get we're not paying iPad Pro prices, and the cuts have to come from somewhere, but 8 megapixel f2.4 and 1080p on the back just feels so 5 years ago. The A12 image signal processor, which ties into the neural engine for features like Smart HDR, should still help make the older glass be all that it can be, but there's just still going to be limits to that older glass. I know some bump haters love these cameras because it doesn't bump, and the iPad isn't often a primary camera, so it could well be the best cut for most people, but I'll take a better camera and a bump any day. There is better news up front though, a 7 megapixel 1080p camera for FaceTime and iPad selfies, which are too a thing. No Animoji or Memoji though, because you guessed it, you need the true depth camera on the Pros for that. But everything else is tuned for AR the way Apple has been tuning everything else on all their cameras for the last couple of years. Well, amazingly well actually, like a crystal clear window into a virtual world well. Playing around with it, everything is just so ultra smooth, so ultra realistic that I just can't wait to get all of this up on my face. The new Mini supports the old Apple Pencil. That's right, the first generation, not the second. Probably because putting a flat inductive charging edge on the side would not only make it look like an iPad Pro, but it would make it cost more like one too. Sure, yeah, you're left charging it out of the Lightning port like an animal, but I love it. The pencil part, not the charging it like an animal part. It's like digital field notes with online sync, something I've wanted, hell, something I've dreamed about for years. I love it. I get that some people might not enjoy smaller canvases for art. I mean, it's been fine for me. But sure, even so, everything from taking notes to marking up documents to freehanding productivity apps like Pages and Keynote works a treat. And just the ability to carry it around in your jacket or sure, non-skinny hipster jean back pocket and just pull it out and start penciling is terrific. For the 10.5 inch, the pencil story is pretty much the same as the older Pro. Bigger screen, bigger canvas, but there's a new chapter. With the 10.5 inch comes the 10.5 inch smart keyboard. It's the old version like the pencil, but confession, I still kind of like it better. You've got to origami it more, sure, but the keys end up in, not out, and that just feels less like bubble wrap when it's folded back. There's no such smart keyboard for the Mini, which is understandable if sad trombone given how small it is, but is it weirder that I kind of want to see what Apple would do with one anyway? The new Mini starts at $399 and the new Air at $499. Now, the internet seems split about the latter, maybe even all Legion about it. Some think it's a real improvement on the Air and right at that perfect original iPad price point. Others feel like it's a cut down Pro without a cut down enough price. When you look at everything it's still packing though, especially with the addition of the A12 processor, I think it delivers significant value for the money, especially for people who want Pro-like features without the Pro-like price tag to go with it. As to the Mini, I initially thought I wanted an even cheaper entry-level model. Absent laminated display and with an older chipset would have made the whole product line even more accessible. But I also kinda always wanted a more expensive full-on Mini Pro as well, with the new design language and yeah, even with a tiny smart keyboard. If I could only have one, I'd be hard-pressed to pick between them. But now it turns out I don't have to. Apple picked a middle ground for a new mid-range iPad Mini that makes the most sense. So now both are the new baselines, the new mainstreams, the new normals. I'm still going to be sticking with the new Pro because I love all the tech that's packed into it, but for most people I'd absolutely recommend the new Mini and Air instead. My mom, who currently has an Air 2, has already asked for the family to team up and get her an Air 3 for her birthday. And my sister, who currently has a Mini 3, has also already asked us all to team up and get her the new Mini 5 for her birthday as well. And I think that's exactly the market for it. Anyone who has a much older iPad that's gotten a little too long in the Lightning port and is looking to upgrade, or people who want pencil and maybe the smart keyboard but could never previously justify the price of a Pro, or are looking to sell or hand down their existing iPad and move on to one of these, or people who are just looking to get into their first iPad but not necessarily at the ground floor. Not the penthouse either, but something Goldilocks just right in the middle. So bottom line, if neither lowest price nor highest performance are your primary drivers, these new iPads are everything you want an iPad to be. And of course, one of the best things you can do with these new iPads isn't just cool, it's brilliant. Brilliant's daily problems are a fun, bite-sized way to master concepts by applying them. Each problem comes with illustrations, animations, or interactive visualizations, and all the context you need to solve the problem yourself. And that's just such a better, more intuitive, more engaging way to learn. Take this one, Turn on the Lights, which deals with how electricity gets transformed into light, sound, and yeah, everything on this iPad right here. If you want to be an engineer, it's a great place to start. But that's just one example out of so many. So if you want to actively learn new, fascinating concepts each day and get 20% off the annual subscription to view all problems in the archives, just be one of the first 200 to head on over to brilliant.org/vector and finish your day a little smarter every day. Thanks, Brilliant, and thanks to all of you for supporting the show. Okay, phew. So this has been a 72-hour whirlwind, but I'll be back with more, much more, on the new iPad Mini and the new iPad Air. So just let me know how deep you want me to go. And if you have any specific questions you want answered, you know what to do. Hit like, hit subscribe, and then hit up the comments below and let me know. And thank you so much for watching.